I heard. Well, I heard fake news too. So wait. First, we're live. So hello, everyone.
Hello,
So
everyone. Fake
let's
news.
summarize the headline. Jarrett, you summarize the headline. Aussie, you counter with what you know, and then I'll counter with what I know. Jarrett, go ahead.
Yeah. So what I heard, and this it's crazy. We just got into this as we were going live, but is
Yeah.
essentially that when Coinbase, and I may be fuzzy on the timeline, so Aussie, please help me, a little bit here, because it is important when they asked Coinbase this supposed question, that before they threw out the lawsuit, they said, essentially, you're Gucci as long as you delist everything except for Bitcoin. And Coinbase was obviously like, that's not going to work. But what I've heard is
Yeah.
that never happened. After I saw it on like very reputable places that I do trust on the internet. So Aussie, what have you heard? And I feel like we've probably all seen both sides of that coin.
Yeah.
So I've heard that conversation's happened recently. And
okay, the timing is important, right?
Yeah. So I've heard that this was a conversation that's happened recently since the lawsuit happened, because I remember hearing those rumors from beforehand, but now what's being reported is at least that it's happened recently, and basically Coinbase said no. And Brian Armstrong has come out with those comments otherwise. So that's what I've heard. So this is incredibly interesting to hear that maybe this is all fake news.
Well, okay. So the sequence I heard, we sound like a bunch of biddies getting our hair did back in the 50s.
That's you actually just perfectly described Not Crypto Bros. We are post World War II.
Yeah.
Sunday salon going ladies in the afternoon.
That's not what I heard, Susie. So what I heard was, or how the newsline headlines came to me, is that it was a recent request and it's throwing cryptos off. And then I saw another headline that summarized what Jarrett said, and that was around the time of the lawsuit a few weeks ago. They threw that in the mix of like, oh, no problem, we'll drop it. Yeah, and just delist everything except Bitcoin. And Brian Armstrong even had a retort of like, well, that's just not gonna happen. And so the market is thrown off now. I believe today the market's kind of rocky a little bit. Are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, but the market's rocky for a lot of reasons. We've been stuck at this. Bitcoin has hit lowest volatility in like a long time for a 30-day period. In the last 30 days, we've been stuck between 31 and 29 something for a while. So volatility has been absolutely nothing. And then we've seen some of the largest inflows onto exchanges we've seen since the bank crash. So to me, it's not necessarily this news that's shaking the market. It's just everything that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think if anything, it's like it always takes a 72 to 96 hour period, if not a little longer, for the interest rates to kind of shake the market. And that came out, what, Thursday or Friday? The 25 basis
Wednesday.
Points? Wednesday. Okay, yeah. So we're on day 6, day 7-ish. So I think that if anything, it would be that would affect the markets.
But that was already
priced
in. That was priced in.
God.
It's baked in, as Jay Harris would say. It's already baked in.
It's Grant, myself, and as somebody who's going to use baked in. Jay, if you're out there listening to this, we miss you. We hope you're well. But your comments about shit being baked in always killed me.
This is why we brought Aussie in, because he's baked in.
Well, another Canadian who likes the baked in theory.
That was our minimum standard requirements for the job application.
We had hundreds of people apply.
But only
we were
one
just
Canadian.
Looking for a Canadian who was subscribed to the baked in theory. Because Jay would be like, it's gonna be 8,000. That won't affect price. It's baked.
It's already baked in.
What is baked in? You're saying future events are baked into the current market. I don't believe you at all.
So,
so go ahead, Aussie.
I will say 99% of forecasters were forecasting this decision. a decision of a quarter basis point hike.
You're right.
So,
you are 100% right. Yes.
So to me, that means that it might be the reason why the market didn't jump. Hasn't pushed past 30 or 31 because they were expecting another increase in interest rates. But it's also why the market's not dump is not. It's why the market isn't dumping because they did a quarter basis point hike. So
interesting.
I mean that normally you'll see an instant reaction and then a trend and then a trend set, but we haven't been seeing that because JPOW has essentially been doing what the market expects.
So JPOW, say that phrase one more time. JPOW is what?
Is doing exactly as the market expects.
So, we've had a lot of conversation about TradFi and DeFi at first being decoupled. And now generally, I feel like they're pretty coupled. And the more institutional investment comes in and gets involved, it will become more and more coupled. What's your sense? Because I'm looking at the markets on, TradFi, and it's like an extreme greedy environment right now. 77% buy, 77% accumulation right now. And DeFi is not doing that. So is this just becoming a unique sector of TradFi, or is this still being massively rocked by news, just rocked in a different way because the dynamic difference between TradFi and DeFi?
I don't think it will ever be a part of TradFi.
What?
What I mean is, I don't think that people will ever refer to these assets as part of the traditional financial system. Or if it does, I shouldn't say never, because you should never say that with tech, especially not with crypto. Yeah. But if it does, it will take 50 years, right? Before an entire generation has died off and people aren't buying like Vanguard or whatever. And you just have like crypto assets and everything's tokenized. I mean, one of the things that like Larry Fink is so bullish on is the tokenization of real world assets and the tokenization. Jesus, George Pate in the house, FedCoin, Lego.
Now? What?
Yeah. So I don't know. I guess I'm kind of, what do you mean by that? Like, as far as TradFi, because for me, like Bitcoin's never going to be part of traditional finance. Once again, I shouldn't say never, because I do think there's a future where, let's say Bitcoin lasts and it continues to go. And that's the case. In the future, you're not going to look at like Bitcoin especially could just be its own thing. It could be seen as like a long-term digital real estate savings mechanism that we're trying to put it in, like, is it a digital asset? Is it a TradFi asset? Is it actual property? Is it real estate? But like in the future, it could just be its own thing, right? I don't know. It's like trying to define. I don't know.
To me, I think it could become basically a system within like a sector within TradFi. I don't disagree. It's like biotech is its own thing. Yeah, you've got health. So
that makes sense.
And I think you could argue you've got like just high tech. So Tesla, Microsoft, Apple all kind of fall in the high tech, and then we could have digital assets, or digital assets might honestly be that subsector where you've got Bitcoin, NFTs, and all of the companies that kind of work in that space.
So I want to add in, because I think you're right. What I'm saying is, even if it's part of traditional finance, it will still be highly like called
compartmentalized
clown show. Yeah. And so if you go to fidelity.com and you go over to products, the products, it says retirements and IRAs, spending and saving, investing and trading, mutual funds, crypto, direct indexing, fixed income bonds and CDs, ETFs, options, sustainable investing, managed accounts, 529, college savings, health savings accounts, annuities, life insurance. So it is already its own thing. And then when I click into crypto, and once again, I'm just using Fidelity. We're not getting paid to talk about Fidelity. Fidelity is probably just one of the biggest financial institutions that has a good retail side that is exceedingly into crypto. I mean, even calling it crypto and not cryptocurrency is already kind of playing more into the culture. But it says, a choice of offerings, trading crypto, ETFs, all this stuff. So,
I think you're right, and why does this matter? Because you're right, it'll be its own clown show. I like that, but that means like degens be degenning, right? I don't think so. So, for example, Tesla is Tesla high tech or is it automotive? And as people categorize it, it's considered automotive at the moment, right?
I usually see it within the S&P 500, and it's usually when it's talked about, it's classified within the,
Tech
um,
sector,
yeah, the tech sector. It's
and
talked about with tech stocks.
that's a pretty powerful testimony. So when you have someone at S&P who is going, where do we put Tesla? They're looking at the profile of the whole company and going, well, why isn't it automotive? Well, it's behaving more like this, or its books, or its PE ratios, or its technicals. They look a little bit more like other comparables in high tech. I think what we're going to see in crypto is they're going to start using crypto as a sector term within TradFi. And that sector might have BTC, but it won't have Dogecoin and Dogelon. It might have micro systems, right? MicroStrategies. It might have MicroStrategies or Grayscale. But Grayscale, not really, because it's got its whole own thing. But MicroStrategies is nearly all Bitcoin holdings. And well, that's not actually fair, right? And I'm being my own devil's advocate to say when these people are being listed somewhere, S&P, the Russell, or the Dow Jones, or something, and they start to get listed, crypto is a security, and the SEC, even with this drama that we still don't have clarity on if it happened yesterday or if it happened a few weeks ago, basically Bitcoin was the only exception. First time I'll ever say it. It's true because the SEC said it. So I think, why does this matter? Because what we mean about DeFi is gone, gone, gone. And when I consider it a part of TradFi, I think it matters because what the implications to the average retail investor, they're thinking it's governed by SEC laws, and it might be at that point. So I think the whole thing is going to be considered TradFi when it's under TradFi regulation. And I think that is imminent. Like, I think it's imminent. And I know that we've looked at these timelines for some of these ETFs. I think as those roll out, it just becomes part of our assumed knowledge that this is under regulation, even though it probably isn't yet. But can you imagine any other direct token, just because it's a token, get listed other than Bitcoin?
No,
I can't imagine another one.
no.
Maybe Ripple goes public or gets bought, and that then gets categorized. But
No, to me, that's just a network token.
no, I mean the company goes public. Forget the token. The token will just be part of a company that goes IPO. But its sole books, its technicals are all on what's going on with the token.
I mean, if
ahead.
Ripple can do that, I'm sure there are other companies that can do that. Like
How many are
Avalanche,
centralized to that degree, though? I mean, maybe
Avalanche,
Stellar,
Solana. I mean, those are pretty centralized as far as I
Avalanche,
understand.
Solana would be a contender. And let me tell you something. Solana would be a player because they have such a strong Silicon Valley backing. They could IPO or do a SPAC or something like that, and have a real war chest that's not now under these crazy tokenomics. Like, I'm sitting here, I've got tokenomics right here. Have you guys read tokenomics?
No.
It's a fantastic book, but I'm looking at it. It's less than a year old, less than 2 years old, and it is outdated. It's gone.
Tokenomics have changed, especially if you look at DeFi and not maybe not even what you call DeFi, Grant, but like DeFi.
Yeah.
Tokenomics change every 3 months.
Because it's an experiment. Economics is incentives, right? If I could summarize economics, it's incentives. And tokenomics implies that there are felt incentives with tokens. There are not many projects that you have felt realized incentives for being a true player in that space. Bitcoin being one of them. Ethereum, like the tokenomics of Ethereum even are like questionable.
I would disagree because you are rewarded. Like, you can buy Ethereum, stake Ethereum to validate for the network, which, because the network has high traffic, and the fact that they burn tokens with every transaction, you're kind of, there is some incentives to be holding Ethereum compared to
Some, but it's not
Polygon,
sure.
or like, do you want? I'm going to pick on Polygon because we all generally like Polygon, but I'll pick
Yeah.
on them because they don't. There's never, there's no burning within Polygon
Correct.
of tokens, and if you think about Solana or any of the other major network tokens, if you're doing issuance as rewards, you need to be at least burning, ideally, an equivalent amount. Through transaction fees and otherwise, to ensure that you don't get supply inflation. And therefore your incentive, but ideally you're actually lessening the supply like Ethereum's doing, so that you're incentivizing holding. Essentially, you're incentivizing supporting the network, because your holdings of Polygon or Ethereum will go up as you validate transactions every month, while the total supply goes down.
So I'm sure you're aware of this, but I wonder if this very problem is why they're introducing the Pol token and encouraging Matic holders to convert to Pol token. There's like a 2-year window for them to migrate to the Pol token, and I wonder how the tokenomics differ. It's important. I mean, Matic is huge, right? And we're doing everything on Matic, but they're eliminating it over a 2-year period. The biggest difference that I'm seeing is Pol, POL is the ticker symbol, is Pol holders will be able to become validators for sure, but I wonder what the burn, if any, burn mechanisms are there. But I guess it's at a different. I guess it's a different token protocol, and I wonder if it's tackling any of this. That would be interesting to look at.
I wonder if I wonder if the poll is also somehow situated, created, written differently about in the white paper that will skirt what we know now about the way the SEC is looking at securities. I just wonder if it's like, okay, these are the rules of engagement that we didn't know when Polygon started. What if we just change it by 10%? But we can't actually change Polygon Matic by 10%, but we can start Pol without having to grandfather things in, and we can also just move people over. I wonder if it's like a larger, longer play to make sure that it plays nice with the government, because I don't see, like, beyond the tokenomics, I don't think many people are seeing Matic as like a long-term investment the way they see other things. It's more just like, yeah, it's a long-term investment because it has a lot of utility, but it's not one of these things like the way people even talk about Pepe coin.
Yeah.
Because the tokenomics are just great, or even the tokenomics of Bitcoin, right? Like, if you look at how much is out there versus how much is left to be mined versus how much could get even gobbled up if like BlackRock, Fidelity, if anybody really starts to like, play around in the sandbox. So I don't know. I wonder if that, and I'm sure that there's probably an answer out there. And now knowing this, I'm going to tweet at Frank DeGod and say, hey, when are you moving Utes? Because that's on Polygon and that's on Matic. It's through the Matic. So like, how does that work?
Well, I mean, there's tokens and then there's the blockchain. So I don't think
they're changing the network.
no.
I
They're
think they're just
upgrading.
changing the
Okay, they're
token.
not. Okay, good.
They're upgrading the network, but no, yeah, I don't. They're calling it Polygon 2.0, but they're not ditching the blockchain. I literally think it's a switch out. Like Matic was an ERC20 token,
I know.
and we have come a long, long ass way. And I think they're just assessing and going, guys, it's easier to roll out a new token than it is to upgrade or try to almost, jerry rig like an ERC20 token as opposed to what's the protocol we're on now. It's I'm trying to see real time while we're talking, like which protocol it's on. I can't see it off the top of my head, so I'll keep looking while we're talking to get more details on it. But it's supposed to also expand governance. It's also supposed to expand security protocols. And Matic is largely, even though you can bridge, how often have we complained bridging Ethereum to Matic? I think the bridge to Pol token is far easier on Polygon 2.0 blockchain. So So anyways, I guess I only bring that up to say, well, it's a reference point, Aussie, but I wonder how much of your concerns about Matic, the poll token will tackle. I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's definitely some different opportunities there.
But I mean, as I think about token and tokenomics in general, though, like aside from, well, what is George getting at here? But what's the difference between cryptocurrency and cryptography, especially if the cryptography is broken? Bitcoin SHA-256 is broken, and all transactions can be tracked and traced. I mean, is that a feature or a bug?
So, I mean, this is an interesting question that George is, because he's saying, like, cryptography should allow people to basically hide their transactions, but the SHA doesn't allow that, because you can look it up on a Bitcoin Explorer and just figure out who sent who what, if the hash, the transaction, and like a wallet address.
Yeah.
So it is a very interesting question. And actually, I'm reading Mastering Bitcoin, which I think, if you're interested in Bitcoin, interested in crypto, you should read. And I've been reading it slowly because it's like a lot of information, and I'm not a native coder. But one of the things it talks about was, and this is just in the white paper, but it comes up a lot, which is the idea that when Satoshi created Bitcoin, they had to come up, this is so crazy. They had to come up with a way to increase the difficulty.
Yes.
And like basically build more hash on the network. And it was this is like so genius, but they had to come up with a way to make harder and harder and harder and harder problems to solve.
Yes.
But that once solved, you could verify in an instant. And that is a fascinating thing. That's saying, like, so the way I think of it is like a puzzle, right? You started out with a 10-piece puzzle. Once you put it together, anyone could stand back and be like, oh, the puzzle is just going to be a white circle on a black background. Okay, good. They did it. And now the puzzle is, million pieces, right? And so it takes a long time to solve the puzzle, but anyone can look at it and verify it really quickly. And that kind of almost speaks to this thing here, where it's like, yes, you're using cryptography, but you're doing that to kind of like allow people to have ownership, not to protect their privacy of transaction on the network.
That's the point I was going to make. The cryptography is to link one block to the next immutably. What we talk about, the immutable ledger, is chain of custody, so to speak. If you had an evidence bag of Al Capone's ledger, and you didn't have that immutable chain of custody, you'll always question, well, did Elliot Ness actually hand it directly to the CSI guy, or did it go to Capone's guy and he erased a line and edited it? How do I have this chain of custody? Cryptography, in the context of Bitcoin, it's called pseudonymous. It's not anonymous. It's pseudo-anonymous, and it was meant to be that way in its OG original intent. The cryptography was meant to say, no, hell or high water, this is the immutable next block. So when I have this block, there's a line of code from this block that gets dropped into the next block, and I want it to be nearly impossible to crack that, to make it an undeniable blockchain, except for intentional forks. And so you go, okay, so the cryptography is not broken. It just doesn't live up to the myth that we formed over the last decade and a half of going, wait, Bitcoin was meant to be anonymous and decentralized, and it's like the revolution, man. And it's like, okay, Occupy Wall Street. So like we definitely have these high hopes, but the hard coding in Bitcoin it wasn't broken. It was the best at what it was for what it was. Our desires have transcended now that we've seen what's possible. And we are like, no, like we really can make DAOs, and we really can give people private power if we do it right. And so the cryptography now has expanded from what you were saying, Jarrett, like block to block. And now we're like, we need to be cryptographically sound from a security standpoint too. But I was going to bring this up on today's show. Do you guys remember the story, the headline of the billionaire I'm sorry, the $1 billion Bitcoin heist from Bitfinex
Mhm.
and the couple that just
Yeah.
got.
I saw your post on this, but I'm excited to hear about this.
Well, I shared a snarky post about, can we quit pretending that Bitcoin's anonymous? Because if the FBI, the NSA, or whoever the IRS, I'm more scared of the IRS than any of our government agencies. The IRS shows up and says, we gonna get.
Tell me you're dodging taxes without telling me you're dodging
Dodging
taxes.
taxes.
I'm
Yeah.
avoiding legally. I'm legally avoiding taxes, but because I'm petrified for the IRS, I will never evade a tax ever.
Channel that Grant Cardone energy, Grant.
No,
Just
get out of
channel
here.
it.
I will.
Channel
I'm
it.
telling you, I will blindly pay my IRS bill I don't want to mess with that. That's the bully that you don't pick on. Like, there's some bullies that you stand up to. You don't stand up to the IRS. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like, I'm petrified of them because they made our government agencies track this couple, one a Russian citizen, the other, I believe, an American, and they are not accused of the heist itself. They just have the accounts, the 2,000 different accounts with 2,000 different seed phrases meticulously saved in a very secure, air quotes included, Google Sheet that the IRS and the NSA just says, give us your info. When it's to the tune of billions, they got. And so, like, I couldn't believe this story, but this was my point about Bitcoin. It was never constructed for pure anonymity. Pseudo-anonymity, sure, but social engineering is so advanced, and by that, I mean, like, they can track dollar amounts, and once you do that, then you get the warrant to Google and say, hey, just give us access to their accounts, and Google says, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, and they now have the what are you laughing about, Aussie?
Yeah, Aussie, what are you giggling about?
Just hey, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Just like all of this, like
Those are the back doors, man. And so does Verizon. I mean, like in the Verizon, and every Verizon building, there's a specific office for the NSA to put their servers. Every single one. What were you going to say, Jared?
I was going to say that this is a shout out, and I'm glad you brought this up because I'm going to get a new phone soon because my 11 is just not kicking like it used to. And I can go get the Apple 14 or whatever, go get the upgrade. Like, they pay for it because I haven't gotten an upgrade in like 9 years or whatever it is. And one of the things I was reminded is next time, and I'm probably just going to go to the Verizon store this weekend or like whatever. And everyone needs to do this if you have crypto, especially if you have 2FA through a text, which maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should put it through a, like a Google Authenticator app or an Authenticator app. You need to go and you need to tell your wireless carrier to never do never approve a SIM swap over the phone. I'm going to go say, put this on my account unless I physically come in this face with my passport. You do not do a SIM swap. Matt Medved, who runs NFT Now, got SIM swapped. And all this past weekend, they were putting up crazy links. And, he was saying, whatever, click on this, whatever. This happens to a lot of people. Jack Butcher also got SIM swapped.
I've seen it about a dozen times.
Yeah,
now.
the bigger you get, and then somebody gets your number from at Consensus, and they're going to wait 3 months. So you're not exactly like, oh, I just gave this guy my number. They're going to go figure it out. Go to your wireless carrier, figure out the things that they need, the buttons they have to push to SIM swap. Yeah. And then they're going to screw you over because they're going to be able to get into your Twitter or your LinkedIn or whatever it is. So this is just the shout out that if you have your 2FA set up with your text, which I think is sometimes can be compromising because if someone gets your phone, and this is why I don't trade crypto on my cell phone, shout out to the security, because if someone could get into my cell phone, get into my Coinbase, then they may have all 2FA. They need to just start moving stuff out.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Coinbase isn't going to know. So anyways, if you go to your wireless carrier, tell them that unless you physically come in to never SIM swap.
That's interesting. I didn't know that was possible, and I'll check that out. And that will prevent hackers. It won't prevent the backdoor of the NSA. Okay, so like just to be clear,
so we're back to the SA.
I give an entire
NSA.
TED talk about crypto security, and then Grant just comes back to be scared of Big Brother.
Yeah,
don't
IRS,
be scared.
NSA,
be
FUD.
in Zen acceptance that this is the way the world is.
I feel like he was like brainwashed or like
no, but Aussie, but he's
special
not.
program.
No, he's not. There's no special program. It's called Florida first. And then second of all, second of all, this is the guy who says he's going to drive the entire panhandle of Florida to go to the 305 just to scan his eyeballs. But yet he's scared of the NSA and the IRS.
I'm not, I'm not scared. I'm in acceptance. I play by the rules. I'll go scan. I don't mind giving them all of my data. I operate my Google Drive like there is someone lurking there. Well, just regulate yourself accordingly, which is why I'm a law-abiding citizen, which is why I do tax avoidance, not evasion, which is why I haven't started my cult yet, because I haven't figured out how to do it in a way where I'll be accused of anything. But it's a narrow...
Where you will be accused of something? That's why you're not starting your cult? Because you want to be accused of a crime?
No. I'm saying, like, to do a cult the right way so that you don't get accused of anything, it's a very narrow path.
It sounds like Grant's gonna watch the Jim Jones NFT, and if you want to get rewards, you get him in a token called Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid. Oh my God. Yeah, there was a great documentary on that for sure, but for another day. Speaking of cults, Hex.
Oh yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about Hex. So, do any of you own Hex or Pulse Chain or Pulse X?
No.
I have 99% of my liquid net worth in Hex. I've never heard Aussie giggle like that.
I've never heard him giggle
like that, and I love that.
That was very childlike, and I cherish it.
It was so authentic. He couldn't help himself. It just came out. It was like a fart he couldn't hold in, you know. Jackie says, Grant's cult, please scan retina for entry. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's not called Nexium, it's called the Nextium. And
okay. But I'm glad we're talking about Hex, and I'm gonna just skip over that. We'll come back to it because now we're in a goofy cult mood. FTX is launching again internationally.
I'm in. I'm here for it.
This is like incredible to me.
I'm here for it.
There's probably 100
Grant's already bought some stock.
Jackie, if you didn't catch us earlier, we probably will have an opening for you, and we invite you in for full DGen Jackie. And I want to hear from DGen Jackie. I want to hear from DGen Jackie what how much Hex she holds and what she's willing to scan. And she's on the polar opposite of me regarding privacy, so that will make for interesting conversation. But so about FTX, like, why not?
I mean,
don't you think?
Okay, wait. Sorry. I'm gonna throw something else on top, and then I'll let you guys decide. I was watching Reels the other night. I like how I say it like it's a show, like I'm an old person here. I was watching Instagram. I sat up, I had my TV dinner, had my Hunger Man, and I was watching Reels.
Salisbury steak, hands down.
Yeah, I have my steak in the gristle, and so this thing comes up, and I see this face, and I'm like, oh my God, I know this guy, because everyone does, at least in the English speaking world. It was Billy McFarlane. He's trying to do another Fire Fest. He's getting financing to do Fire Fest. He said 1.5. He said 1.5 didn't work out. That's what he tried to get off the ground when he got out of jail. So he said, we're going for Fire Fest 2.0. He's literally trying to go back to the Bahamas and do. And
I'm willing to bet his little sister, his little girlfriend, Anna, the heist. What is her?
Anna, yeah.
Not Corinna, Anna, whatever her name is. I bet you she's behind that too. So is he actually going to try to do something, or is he? You think everyone's going to get the long rug pull?
I don't know, but I will say, if it is under a certain amount of money, I will go just for the content.
Oh my God.
Do you know how crazy that's going to be? It's going to be everyone that goes is going to be doing what I'm going to be doing, which is just filming the entire thing.
What? It's probably going to be good because all the influencers now want to be a part of the influence, and they're going to make it good because it's going to be trash, but they're going to go like, it's going to be the ironic fest.
Exactly.
And they're going to go for the irony, and then it's suddenly going to be the baddest thing ever.
There's going to be
all of them show up to film it.
Exactly. Well, they'll instead of, because like, how they had their thing and it was like, you'll get a villa, and then you showed up and it was one of those like hurricane tents. This time they should just literally say it's a Coleman 2-person tent and sell it for $300 a day. And that thing's $20 at Walmart.
The Tantra tent is really just like an old shopping bag, like taped over.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. That's it. It's like, oh, you want the vegan? That's great. It's water the entire time. That's all you're getting. If you want vegan food.
So at this rate, SBF will be the CEO of the new FTX. At what rate, Brian? And at the rate of how
so
slow
I get what he's talking about.
the pace of his case.
Well,
how can you wait, Aussie? You understand Brian's thing here? It feels
yes,
like a
I
fortune
do.
cookie.
No, it's if you know anything about what's going on around SBF in his case right now, you know
I'm sorry,
what
I
he's
haven't
talking
been
about.
deep in it, Aussie.
Yeah.
I'm not deep in it either, but I just pay attention to what's going on. And they just dropped another charge against him. So he was originally charged with like I think 13 counts or something like that. He's now down to 11 counts. They just dropped the count about illegal contributions to
Political campaigns.
yeah.
I did see that, which is like millions and millions of dollars.
It was like
which
to the
really
tune of
gets,
70 million.
Yeah.
a lot of
So are you
coin.
saying, Aussie, that the contributions didn't happen, or is the case saying that it wasn't criminal?
What they're saying is the Bahamas won't. What the prosecution said is the Bahamas won't extradite him on that charge.
Oh shit. Okay. That's tough. I mean, that's got to create some butthurt at the federal level in the United States. Like, we were hoping to take down this clown on this, and meanwhile, the Bahamians are like, nope. Why? Because they're fine with that. Like, corruption's embedded in a lot of Caribbean countries, and it's like, but is it illegal? Are you sure about that?
I feel like the Bahamas is, we talk a lot about going to El Salvador in December.
Yeah.
I feel like we might need to go to the Bahamas. That's where FTX had his mansion, his poly mansion. That's where Billy McFarland
I need me a
tried to
poly
have
mansion for sure.
his music festival.
That's where Firefest was?
Yeah, Bahamas.
Is that where it's going to be?
That's where it was. That's probably where 2.0 is. I don't know.
Oh my God.
Go film
So what is
Firefest
Brian
2.0.
getting at here, though?
Well, basically, he's saying they're just going to continue to slowly drop charges against him, and then he'll be the new CEO of FTX.
It eventually, like, they'll be down to the last charge, and that's having shit-ass hair when you have that much money. And then he'll serve for time served, and they'll shave his head, and then he'll come out and be like, FTX 2.0, motherfuckers. Like, let's...
I mean, his hair is such a big part of who he is. If he shaved his head, lost 20 pounds, got really into CrossFit, and started being a vegan, like, you wouldn't know who that guy is. He could come sell me some snake oil called Hex. I'd buy it.
Yeah, him and Hart. What, Jack Hart? What's this guy's name?
Which guy? Oh yeah. So he's the guy in the video who's walking out of like some Louis Vuitton or Gucci store in Italy, and he's got all the bags. He's got a bag in his mouth, and like objectively, seriously, are those clothes supposed to be cool? Like, I don't know. He looks like a clown to me, straight up.
Well, you know what's weird is like, so who pulls this off? Gary Vee pulls this off. Like, he has legit swag from legit sports teams. He handpicks his shoes. Like, he does have, and I don't like that look. I'm like, okay, this, Gary Vee kind of looks like, the way he dresses just seems too informal. But for those who are like shoe heads or like into like sports, and he's actually got real stuff going on. I think Richard Hart has been trying to pull this off, but he's bought all the real stuff. But he feels like if he were dressed even slightly different, he'd be at that low dive bar hitting on 20-year-old women. It's got a little bit of a creeper vibe, and it always has for me. You guys could go back to the show where I gave Jay Harris total shit about Hex being anything worthwhile, and this guy just being like, if you listen to him talk, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
I haven't actually heard him say much semblance of rationale. He has logic, and he's an intelligent seeming guy, but I've just never been sold. It seems so inauthentic. He seemed like he was putting on so many fronts. So we don't know. So, like, is this a comeuppance? This is a $1 billion lawsuit. It's a billion. He misappropriated. I'm looking at the article right here at the SEC. Misappropriated $12 million. Has Richard Hart done any business before Hex?
Like, has he worked at a Dairy Queen?
Yeah, like did he own a Dairy Queen franchise?
Yeah, like what do you mean business?
Has he owned and built and been an executive of his own LLC, his own company? Has he done even what you've done, Jarrett, and I've done, and that's build a small web company, something small, mom and pop sized even? Because it seems foolish.
Phenomenal question.
It seems
He has his own
foolish.
website, guys.
Oh, I know. Like richardhart.com?
Yeah.
Wait, really? Hold on. HART?
Richard Hart is a force for good.
Yeah, force for going to jail.
He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page.
He doesn't.
He doesn't have a Wikipedia page. He has a Wakita page.
A Wakita page?
Yeah. Let me share my screen because this is.
Yeah, Aussie speaking French again.
Like.
Aussie never asked to share his page, which I'm really excited about. What is a Wakita page? It sounds like a rare. It sounds like an extinct animal.
I have no clue what this is, but he's
also,
not on Wikipedia. But he's on this.
I clicked on his IG and nothing came up. I clicked on his Twitter and whatever.
So he has warned against BlockFi, Celsius, and FTX. So I mean, I do recall videos of that ages ago, but he strangely didn't warn us about himself. But they didn't go bankrupt, apparently. Apparently they're just getting sued. And so this isn't necessarily mismanagement, it's misappropriation of funds. But it seems kind of foolish to say, I raised $1 billion. We've managed our company well. We're not bankrupt, but I just commingled funds and went and bought myself luxury goods.
Can you bring up the video, Grant?
Which video?
The video of him walking out of that store wherever he is.
Oh, I'll look for it here.
Because like objectively, like if you're watching this, like hop in the comments, like, is this cool clothes? If somebody's wearing these clothes, are you like, yeah, I want to go sit in public with them. I want to talk with them. I want to know what they're about. Like, I just don't high-end fashion to me on some level. I'm just like, I don't get it. High-end fashion that has these type of like, Gucci, where you just like, it says Gucci everywhere. There's really high-end fashion. And actually there's a reel I share with my friend who's into fashion. And it talks about, it's like ghost high-end fashion where it's like a $3,000 t-shirt, but there's no name on it, but you have to know or you don't know. Right.
And to George Pate, George, we're talking about Richard Hart of Hexcoin, who just got sued by the SEC for $1 billion. And again, this wasn't a collapse. Like we have to throw credit where credit is due. Like there's no collapse that has gone on. Hex token did 10,000x, and people have made money on it. I'm looking for this video while we're talking here, but there's just commentary. I don't see him walking out with swag.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it too.
So that's who we're talking about, George Pate, and because I think this is going to get oogly. And my question is, it says he scammed investors, but like, if you raised $1 billion, would your salary not equate at least to 12 million?
I mean,
that's a reasonable salary. So you've raised this money. It gets invested into the company. The company shows returns. Hopefully you build a business. They have an exchange, Pulse X launched. They have Hex.com. I'm not really sure what Hex.com does, but there's at least some semblance of deliverables. So you would think that, well, I mean, I make a salary, but over the entire story arc of 12 to 50 million, maybe out of $1 billion, right? Like it's a fraction. And you probably have a ton of holdings yourself as well. So how are they saying that he used investor funds and scammed them as opposed to just took his salary and spent it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe he took out of a pot that he wasn't supposed to touch. That's the only thing I can come up with. Because when I saw that too, I was like, if rich people, wealthy people, people that have a lot of liquid, if they want to go buy whatever they want to buy, like whatever. But if he's taking it out of something that was like not a pot of money he was supposed to touch in the back end, that's an issue. And that's, I think, what it comes down to.
Well, and that's how they get got, right? I mean, that's nearly always, that's how we get Capone. It's how we get these people. So you were not kidding. He's got a bag in his mouth.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, just
ridiculous.
those pants are ridiculous. And those pants are probably worth like $8,000. But like, I don't know. I guess
I
it's
find
weird to
Louis
me.
Vuitton clothes ugly, like god awfully ugly.
Well, I've told the story. I don't know if I told you guys the story of the time that I was in Vietnam and we were boarding a boat. And I noticed the travelers on the boat had these steamer trunks, very expensive Louis Vuitton steamer trunks. And the porters kind of threw it around, and the owner just lost her lid, like white girl fever, right? Like lost her shit. Well, the Vietnamese guy couldn't figure it out, and she chilled and she went on. And I was standing with one of the dock masters, and I was like, "Hey," because we had an international political economy class. You know, we were talking about business and economics, and I said, "What's going on with this? Why does the Vietnamese guy look confused?" He said, "Well, look at his hat." And it was a ball cap. Louis Vuitton ball cap. And I was like, what the hell? I mean, like, I know these people do not get paid even American salaries. So what are we talking about? He said, oh, no. The Louis Vuitton factory is just down the way. And all this is just scrap to them. It's scrap material. It's wrapped around things. And so they make hats out of it because they just have, it's extra material. It's like your grandma's muumuu turned into a hat to them. And it means nothing to them except the meaning we give it. So, I mean,
I love that
turned
story.
me off to high fashion, like right away.
I love that story. I'm going to retell that story. Maybe in the
You're
first
allowed to
person.
retell it. That really happened to me, man. I just couldn't believe it. And so when I see this, of course, I think this is a joke, but I'm not fooled. I know like consumerism says that this is worth something and it offers credibility, social proof. So I get the marketing behind it, but is it a scam? You know, like is this case going to bear fruit for the SEC?
I don't know. I think the SEC is just trying to take any shot they can at crypto. They think it's low hanging fruit. They think people are fearful. I have no idea.
Thanks, George.
I'm not
Appreciate
really
sure. So I think George wants to talk about WorldCoin because he's like, who are we talking about? And he's like, are we talking about Sam Altman WorldCoin again? But there's no new news on WorldCoin right now. And I'll report back.
They are getting actually investigated by both France and the UK.
I didn't hear about the UK. When did that kick off?
Friday, or maybe Monday. Maybe the news might have came out Monday.
What do we know?
They're inquiring the legality of their data, their collection of biometric data. That's kind of.
Are there any laws against it for voluntarily submitting biometrics?
I mean, in some, well, I'm not actually sure about these particular jurisdictions, but this was an article that was shared internally with some coworkers, and I put it there, Grant. If you could drop that in the chat, that'd be great. But that article brings up a lot of ethical issues as to how they've got basically their first 500,000 people, and a lot of times they promised to pay people, but they didn't always come through, and that is an issue because they're basically getting people's biometric data, and they're not upholding that like side of the contract. And a lot of people did sign things, so there are like contracts signed.
Yeah, there's a whole consent form, and so like you could definitely feels like there's already some things, and also all the pictures of people lining up, they're all in developing countries.
Yeah, you guys need to read this article. It's quite crazy. There was a Chilean guy who was like, "Yeah, I signed, but the consent form was only in English," and that is like, as someone who has seen other, especially people in the United States, in Latin America saying, why don't you speak English? Like linguistic imperialism is one of my biggest pet peeves. If you travel to another country where they don't speak your language, you need to be grateful and you need to, get outside your comfort zone. And not everyone speaks the language you speak, especially when it's English and especially when you come from the United States. And so to only have a consent form in English seems so crazy when OpenAI can put their consent form into fucking ChatGPT and say, turn this into Spanish, and it will do it. Like,
wait a minute.
What the hell?
Wait a minute. I agree that it is ethnocentric to do that, but to sign a contract you can't read?
Yeah. So
whose fault is that? That's the consumer's fault.
I agree. It could be the consumer's fault. I hear you, Grant, 100% of the time. Whenever you put your pen to paper, that's on you. The problem is when they have an economic incentive in impoverished places, they're putting people against the wall here, a rock and a hard spot. You know, if someone's going to give you what would be in the States $200 to sign a piece of paper, and oh, you don't understand the form, and all you have to do is look in this orb and it scans your body and your eye, that's a lot of money, you know? So it's like, is there even a decision to be made if some people are on the edges of the economic fringe, if it's down to survival and that money will help them survive? You know what I mean?
Like if you're offering someone in some of these countries $50 or $60, that's maybe more than they make in 2 months, or more often than not. It's
I would just advise everyone to check out this article. It was really, really well done. And it points out a lot of problems to the origins of WorldCoin and how a lot of the data was totally done in developing nations, in the global south, in places where they knew people were going to be basically more open to giving up their biometric data. The other thing is it definitely calls out, because when we talked about WorldCoin, we were kind of like, we weren't sure. US and China, it's harder for them to do, and they've really kind of tried to stay out of those regions, at least when they were starting, because they started back in 2021 to get some of this data because of our privacy laws. And Beijing really wants nothing to do with people interfering with their citizens, essentially.
Also, guess who backed this? Three Arrows Capital, SBS,
nice.
and like amongst others. So
therefore, and the Not Crypto Bros.
he did buy WorldCoin. He did buy WorldCoin.
Still holding. It's down. It's down a little bit. Still holding. So I will read this. I commit that, and it's a technology review or MIT Tech Review article. I mean, it's from, in my opinion, a credible source. I will read it. What's the TLDR for you?
The TLDR for me, just let me step back and give you an anecdote of my life, something you guys may or may not know about me. In 2015, I graduated grad school. Most of my friends went to work for the UN, for UNICEF, for Mercy Corps, for global NGOs that are trying to, save the world, solve the world's problems, climate crisis, poverty, economic inequality, raise up women, et cetera, et cetera. And I got some money from some investors, and I went down to Guatemala and I started a company, a social impact company. We were trying to do triple bottom line, people, profit, planet. And shortly into that, we realized that we were going to have to play ball with the Guatemalan government. Yeah. What I mean is they wanted us to slide $10,000 across the table, and they were going to slide this certificate we needed to be able to operate in Guatemala with what we wanted to do with construction.
Yeah.
And the long conversations we had about whether we do that, right? And the thing that we landed on was, if we do that, even though we may do amazing amounts of good after that, for Guatemala, for the people, for the children. We were going to be building schools out of trash. If we do that, we started the project in original sin, and eventually it would come out. And when it would come out, we would have to shut the doors the next day, because we would always know, hey, we were wrong. We knew that we started this thing out of sin. We started this thing out of not positive energy. So I ended up walking away from that. I feel like after reading this article, WorldCoin started the same. I see what they were trying to do. They were trying to get a bunch of information to train all their products, to get things up and running. And they said, well, if we do it in the States, maybe it's $10 to $20 per person, right? We have to, or maybe more than that, maybe 100 or 250 or 500 if we're sitting in a mall in the middle of America. But they said, why don't we just go abroad anyways? Because these are the people we're probably going to be trying to help first, that maybe are most affected by AI. There's so many call centers around the world where people who speak English service the English speaking world, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it's like, it started now seeing this, now reading this, it started out of not good things. I don't think they thought it through. And I think the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And so for me now, as having read this, I'm just like, the whole thing's tainted. It's got these, it's kind of like the way I think about the 2022 World Cup. It was an amazing World Cup. I cried when Argentina won, but like 2,000 plus migrant migrant workers who were brought there basically under slave conditions died to build those stadiums. So it's tainted, you know? So I think it's that.
So will you never go to another World Cup?
No. I will go to the World Cup, and I've been saving up for the World Cup in 2026. It's going to be in the US. I think
That's how
FIFA
I
is
feel about
one of the most
projects like
corrupt. Yeah, I mean, I think FIFA is one of the most corrupt things. But for me, this is about privacy, though. This is about
I
giving up your
also just don't
biometric
like
data.
who's backing it. I mean, the fact that you've got SBF and Three Arrows Capitals, both
And not Crypto Bros.
and not Crypto Bros, all backing this in their original funding round. Like,
I don't mind that, Aussie. I don't mind that. At that time, all of those entities were
we're
flush with
legit.
cash. They were just trying to get in on something new. They know Sam Altman. They've been sitting around Silicon Valley. They're all just playing like mini golf or whatever they do together. That doesn't bother me. You know, like,
I
And
don't know. To
honestly,
me, it's just adds a little salt to the wound. I'm like,
y'all be salty in general. Like,
oh,
yeah,
really?
like
Really?
because I can
Florida
easily
man?
imagine what? What did he say?
he just called you Florida man.
Oh my god. We be a little salty in Florida, but not for the same reasons. Just because it's hot out and we're sweating all the time. I could easily imagine a world where there's zero maliciousness here. And they literally, from a motivational standpoint, go, guys, win-win or no deal is the rule of the game. These people are poor. And if we could go give them $20, $50, $100 for their biometrics, that's a win for them. They just have to scan their eye. Then we come over here and we've got our first 400,000 or a million data points. Like, that's a win-win, right? That's a Silicon Valley solution. And maybe it's in a distortion bubble, and maybe there's not an ethical gut check. But for me, I don't see maliciousness here in the least. Maybe ethnocentricity.
You would
Maybe
never
ignorance.
hear.
Go ahead, Aussie.
You would never let research like this would not be approved in the US by like any major university wouldn't probably approve this research in the form that it was conducted. Through
So what though? Like again, like that
That's
doesn't make it
ethics.
malicious.
So I agree with you, Grant, and I think there's totally a lens and a way in which this happens, and it's not a bad thing. But I think the way that they did go about it is just kind of crazy. And like, I think whenever you take money from the U.S., especially, and you take it to another country and you dangle it in front of people who you know need it, and whatever you're asking them of them, it there's just a hierarchy and there's a power, an implicit power dynamic there that is really ugly. And I just think it's like looking at this from my current lens of Mercy Corps and international development, it's fucking disgusting. It would never fly. If let's just say this. If Mark Zuckerberg did this and it broke out and New York Times ran it and people were like, what the hell? The stock price would plummet 20 to 30%. Like, it would be bad. Like, going around two countries where you're dangling that type of money in front of them, it's just bad. I don't know. I've just spent almost now 10 years of my life since I graduated college, and there's such a dynamic and a power when it comes to money between certain places and other places that to take advantage of that is disgusting.
So again, I agree when seen through that lens. But like, my development work taught me 50 shades of gray, right?
Sure.
And by that I mean, for example, one of the biggest things we saw in our work in Haiti, one of the events that rocked me the most in my work in Haiti is I was in Port-au-Prince. We worked outside of the city. We worked up in the hill country around Kenskoff. But I was in Port-au-Prince. We were doing a supply run, and we ended up down by the docks in the Haiti, basically the Haiti Bay. And I saw a gringo, and he had a big bushy beard. He was standing on the docks, and he had an M16, which wasn't that abnormal. I mean, this was like 2008, 2009. We were just kind of coming through the dirt cookie stories and headlines. It was a pretty wild place at the time. There was, Haitian gangs, in the machete groups. They basically walk around with machetes. So I walked up to this guy just being Mr. Friendly. And he saw me approach, spun around, aimed his gun at me, and started yelling at me in English and in French and in Creole. And he was a gringo, and I was like, what the hell? It was a very bizarre situation. And then I realized this guy was an operator. This guy worked for the government because a Scarab boat pulled up. And a bunch of Latinos of some origin, I'm not really sure, but I could guess, pulled up, stacks of cash this big, handed to the guy, and then pulled the boat out. This is the stopping point for the drug trade, and it's managed. About 80% of the American Colombian drug route goes through Haiti, and they pay the American government basically what amounts to an informal tax. You could call it corruption, but it actually moves into the black book budget of the United States government. We hung out in, if you remember the earthquake, it flattened a major hotel. We used to hang out for dinners whenever we'd go into the Port-au-Prince. We used to go to dinner there because all the expat communities and all the operators would work out of there, and the NGOs too. So we would just have this huge networking event of just international community. And that's how we found out that, no, this is like most of the cocaine trade comes through here, goes up through from here to Miami. If they don't pay these guys, they notify the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard gets them. But if they do notify these guys, they get a call from these guys, and the Coast Guard leaves them alone. And so that's how you get basically the American cocaine trade. And so I saw that, and I go, why do they do that? The moral of the story is they want to control. They want the information, the knowledge of what's going where. And right next to that, and Jared, you might appreciate this, was a USAID warehouse of rice. Mm-hmm. Now, at the time, they were doing the dirt cookies. And the way USAID works, for those who don't know, Jared, I'm sure knows, Aussie, just with your economics, you might know. What USAID will do in an area goes, this place has been drought-stricken. Yes, it has. Congress approves a huge aid bill. Our aid money comes in, and we look at the farmers and go, what are you used to getting per pound? And they go, well, I'm used to getting, let's just call it $1 a pound for my rice. And they go, okay, great. How much if we buy all of your rice? And they go, really? They go, yeah. They still get it on bulk. So from $1 a pound, it drops to, say, 50 cents a pound. So, but they sell all of the rice. And that rice then goes into a warehouse, a USAID warehouse. They stamp it USAID, and the Haitians grew it. The Haitians packaged it, and it goes into this warehouse. They got 50 cents on the dollar, so they're getting less than they normally would. But they sold it all to one seller. It was just super efficient. Well, guess what they don't have to bring to the market? They don't have any rice to bring to the market. So the headline suddenly says, drought-stricken, no food. Then Congress goes, release the rice. Their very own rice that they bought for 50 cents a pound. Then they flood the market for free. And now the farmers themselves are out of business because they're being given their own rice. Mm-hmm. A great book on this was called Travesty in Haiti, and it profiled USAID as well as Catholic Charities who were doing this cycle everywhere on the planet. Mm-hmm. So I saw this going on with drugs. I saw this going on with rice, and I realized these people aren't necessarily being malicious. There's just 50 shades of gray of what is right. And you can say from a macroeconomic, this makes sense, but from a microeconomic, it makes no sense. And it's goofy. So what works? And it's hard to say. I think this when I think about someone like Sam Altman thinking, fuck, I got a solution. If we're having trouble in the U.S. getting this approved, why don't we take it to another country where no one really gives a damn? We pay everyone a just fair day's wage to just get their eye freaking scanned. We get our data, they get paid, and we don't have to wrestle with this. Hashtag, I'm an out-of-the-box thinker. And it's like, okay, I get it. So
how many mushrooms has he taken at that point?
Who knows? But my question to you, Jared, who's very sensitive to this issue, who's been boots on the ground much longer than I have, when does the line get drawn?
For me, it's exactly like I like what you just said. Hey, the thing is like, okay, we can't get it done in the States. Why can't we get it done in the States? Because it's going to cost us too much money, and privacy laws are just different. So, okay, we can't get by these privacy laws. So let's go where those privacy laws don't exist. And for me, it just comes into a thing where they're just basically buying people's humanity because it's cheaper, and they're bypassing privacy laws. And it just looks shady. It really feels. And the other thing is, it's also like we're going to go do this on them. We're not going to ask them if they want us to do that. And then when we go, we're going to pay the governments off so they let us hang out here and do this. And whenever that's done, it's a top-down decision. And any work and development that's done or work internationally that's done that's top-down is not good. Just like I didn't like how the U.S. went in 2001 or 2002, I should say, into Afghanistan.
Yeah.
They had nothing to do with
Yeah.
the hijackers. They came from Saudi Arabia. We know this. This is well documented. So anytime anything's hierarchically done, and it's just kind of like, oh, I've decided this is what we're going to do. We can't do it here. We're just going to go over there. I get super sensitive about that.
Well, and you know, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I just think that's crap. And once again, please read the article, come to your own conclusions. Yeah. But I just think that, like, you know, this isn't also like we're going to go to Indonesia because it's cheaper for people to try out our app where you're like playing Frogger, right?
Yeah.
This is people's biometric data. And there is a great conversation about that I think it comes exactly to what you're saying, Grant, right? And I actually did a podcast on this I'm going to release tomorrow, but I struggled to get through to it because I couldn't really, like, I'm not sure if it's good or it's bad. It just kind of is what it is, right? It depends on which side of the fence you look at it. Everyone looks at a painting different, but I think it really was resonant to me. It sounded like a conversation we had in grad school, which is all about the organ trade, right? If you go and get someone's lung or liver or, you know, something that they have extra that they're going to give to you, are you taking advantage of the fact that $300 in some place, somebody will literally give you a part of who they are?
Sure.
Right. But on the other flip side, it's like, hey, you know what? The guy takes this, he goes and buys a new fishing boat, and now he's making twice as much for his family for the next 24 months. And then he's going to take more money and reinvest and now have 3 fishing boats, so there's probably like both sides. But for me, it feels like the organ trade, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of places in the world, we would say, oh my God, that's so horrific. But in other places, they're like, that is our economy. There's nothing else we can do.
Well, I think about the sex trade. The sex
trade
trade is a big question because when I think about the sex trade and say, for example, Las Vegas, Nevada, or Amsterdam, I feel almost blasé. But then I think about the sex trade in the DR, and something about it feels different. And
why is that? It's the power dynamic. I think if someone,
if they had the same economic status, but they were still making the same decisions, it's legal in all of those locations I just named. It's a legal thing. But like, I was working for a ministry in the DR, and their goal was to pull people out of the sex trade. And we worked with them. I wrote a book about it called Go Mad, and MAD was an acronym for Go Make a Difference. It was the name of the ministry we were partnering with. But halfway through, I started getting really weird vibes because it's not that I knew how to feel. I felt bad about it, but I knew that these girls, the legal age girls, were making a conscious decision to make more in a weekend than they could make in an entire year with working with us. And I had to pose the question, man, who am I to judge this decision? But something did feel weird, and I think you're getting at there's an intrinsic global hierarchy that maybe if they were on par with Amsterdam and were making the same decisions, more power to them.
If they had the same opportunities, if I come into the room and I say, hey, Aussie and Grant, I'm selling these cell phones. They're $300 a piece.
Yeah.
And no, they're $30 a piece. You guys are like, oh, I don't want them. But then I'm like, no, cell phones is a bad example. I mean, the biometric data is a great example, right? Like there are people in the United States, right, who, if you offer them $500, they're not going to give you their biometric data. But then there are other people who are super poor, who have no money to them. They work, they eat, they whatever they make, they put into their food. They're barely making their rent. They're probably in $10,000 of credit card debt, if not more. They have no savings. And then I go to them because you guys don't want to give me your data because your privacy wonks. And then I go to them and then they give me their data. That's exactly what this is. I'm taking advantage of their economic situation and potentially their low knowledge about how contracts work and even the importance of biometric data. Maybe that's not even a conversation they've had, or they don't even see how they're possibly being guinea pigs, because what they see is the relationship that you've talked about, which is like, hey, I'm getting paid some good money that would normally take me about a month or 2 months to make, and I don't have to do anything. Wow, that's kind of great. That to me seems dystopian. right? Like that is literally the movie Elysium with Matt Damon, where you have all these rich people who are outside the earth, and then everyone else is poor on earth, but earth is now a hellscape, right? And so for me, it's the hierarchy and the dynamic of money that I've just lived with for a long time in my life, and it's uncomfortable. You know,
Is it the same in your mind? Like the
I'm
say for
gonna
example,
just interject here because we are already over time.
Yeah, we're way over, and I do need to go.
Jarrett said he had to go.
Oh,
And I'm
God,
just
he
gonna
does have to go.
And then I'm just gonna drop this bomb. We had 2 banks close this weekend in the last like 3 days in
I
the
know,
US,
and
and
no one
nobody's
talked about
talking
it.
about it.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna drop that bomb. Maybe we talk about it on Friday, but we need to let Jarrett go.
Yeah, I gotta go. We should definitely continue this because this is a
Yeah.
great conversation, and I agree. I think for me, it's like the organ trade. It could be really great for the actual people who are going to give up their whatever, whether it's biometric data or their extra liver or whatever it is. But at the same time, it's like, did they have a chance? Did they have a choice? A lot of times in life, we're like, well, they had a choice. They signed the contract. And it's like, it's between them starving, them not getting medicine for their family. Did they really have a choice? Not in the way we think of choice. You know what I mean? So, anyways,
Interesting.
that's where
Well,
I
I
kind of want to come
appreciate
back
you
to.
guys
Yeah.
entertaining that conversation well over time. I do want to talk about this for the next 45 hours. Brian
Me
Naughton
too.
says, I
Me
agree that
too.
it's exploitative in the context of the global South. Thanks for sticking around, Brian. Aussie, thanks for letting us run with that thread for a while. And I'm passionate about it. Jarrett's obviously passionate about it, but I'm passionate in trying to understand it and know where the line is so that I know how to govern myself. But this was beyond crypto. This is not crypto, but bros. So thanks everyone for stopping by. Join us next Friday or this coming Friday at 10 a.m. We'll see you guys.